Well, we're just past 2, so I guess we'll start going and see how it goes. So, well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this very special installment of the Boost Your Skills webinar series, where we enlist the advice of specialist experts in order to help you make the most out of your university experience and to acquire the skills to help you succeed and develop on both a professional and personal level. My name is Siddharth, and I'm from your Boost Your Skills team. This event is in webinar format, so you will not be able to turn on your cameras and mics, but we would still love to hear from you through the chat function. This is a safe space with no judgments being passed, so please feel free to ask questions without fear or worry. If you are still anxious, feel free to message us anonymously and we will pass it on. The event will consist of a presentation split into 3 sections and some time at the end for Q&A. We are also live streaming this event to our YouTube channel, so don't worry if you've missed something. We'll be sharing a link to the video and the slides after the event. And a big thank you to all our attendees who have pre-submitted questions. We host live webinars regularly, and so if you'd like to stay updated, please follow our Instagram page at Boost Your Skills and keep an eye on the events tab on your engagement portal. Our very special presenter today is Graham Shaw. Graham is a speaker coach and author, and he's one of the most popular TEDx speakers with over 39 million views online. He's worked with numerous organizations worldwide, including HSBC, Google, and PwC. His book, The Speaker's Coach, has won several prestigious awards and is available now on your student store with an exclusive 15% discount. The link will be in the chat. So without any further delay, here's Graham.
Okay, thank you, Siddharth, and welcome everyone to Presenting with Confidence and Impact. I'm delighted to be able to see you all there. Well, I can't see you, but hopefully you can see me. It's great to be presenting today. And the first thing I would say, if you've ever... Siddharth, can I see myself on here? Can I just ask or not? No?
I'd just like to say, I'm not too sure if your video is actually showing.
Hang on a second. Let me just check. Wait a moment. Whoa, let's just check this. Sorry.
Yeah, it looks like it's gone off. If we could just double check that.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Right. Right.
There we go. Looks like you're back.
Is that okay?
Looks okay to me.
Can you see?
Yeah, it looks like we can. Yeah.
Can you see me? Can you see me? Or I can see the microphone.
I can definitely see you. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right. I think we'll take 2 there. Sorry about that. I thought it was odd. I was expecting that I could see myself because when I write on the flip chart, it's then I can see if they can see it, if the group can see it.
No, it looks like we're okay now. So go ahead.
I wasn't there. Right. 2. Sorry about that. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Presenting with Confidence and Impact. Lovely to not see you all, but meet you all virtually. And thank you for joining. Now, the first thing I would say is that many of you have probably presented before, either formally or perhaps informally at school or college. And or you might have done it as part of a hobby or an interest or spoken at some informal event. And there's no one way of presenting. So if you've got things that work for you, do keep doing them. What I hope to do is to add some ideas and share some ideas with you that I know work, and you can choose from those which you'd like to adopt. People ask me all sorts of questions about presenting, such as, where do I look if it's live? What do I do with my hands? Should I move about? What if somebody asks an awkward question that makes me off track? What do I do then? Or how do I overcome nerves? All those sorts of things. And what I'd like to do today is to share some top tips with you all about that. And I'll explain how I'm going to do that in a moment. All I need from you is to have an open mind and be prepared to have a go, because I will be asking you to do some things occasionally, like sit down or stand up. And even though I can't see you, learning these skills is a bit like riding a bike. You have to actually do it. And you get the feeling of it more if you join in, and no one will be able to see you anyway. So just ask you that. From time to time, I'll ask a question to go in the chat. So if you fancy putting things in there, that'd be great. And actually, the first thing, just before I explain in more detail what we're doing, The first thing is to just ask you if there are any particular concerns that you have. You can pop those in the chat now. There will be an opportunity for questions at the end. So if there are any concerns or particular things you want to learn, put those in the chat. And if Siddharth spots them there, he'll tell me one or two that are popping up. I can't actually see the chat from where I am, but he'll let me know.
So far, nothing yet, but
Nothing coming in yet. Perhaps you
nothing.
can keep.
Oh, there we go. So the first one is I am worried that I may stutter over certain words.
Stutter over certain words. Okay, that's one.
No more
Any
yet.
others coming in?
No more just yet. So
No more just yet. We'll crack on. But people feel free to put them in there or post any questions, and we can pick all these things up at the end. So that's great. The other thing that might be handy is if you've got a topic in your mind that you often present on, or something you might be presenting on at college or university or in any situation, you might want to just write that down on a bit of paper now. We're not going to do a huge thing with it, but just to keep it in mind as I come up with examples of how we structure ideas, then it might be one that you can keep in mind as we go along. Just worried about if my body language is obvious and I'm really nervous. Okay, yeah. So that's an area that we're going to be dealing with, is body language and nerves. I'll make a note of that anyway. Thank you. So spotted that one. Okay, so let's get started. What I'd like to do first of all is give you an overview of the areas that we're going to be covering. Another one coming in the chat I can see there.
yes, there's
so
just a couple just about nervousness and anxiety. So I think
yeah,
again, you'll cover. So yeah.
we're covering that. So that's great. Thank you, Siddharth. So let's look at the areas that we're going to be covering. Here we go. Have a look at these. So the first one is your personal impact. When we're presenting, a lot of the ways in which we convince people are really through our own personal impact, how you stand, how you move, how you use your voice, those sorts of things. And so that's what we're going to focus on first. Secondly, what I'm calling the magic structure here. When I say magic, I don't know if you've ever wondered about how can you pitch a talk that would appeal to everyone, or at least most people, most of the time. It's not always easy to do, is it? You're thinking, how am I going to pitch it? Well, there is a way that you can structure a talk that will appeal to most people most of the time, if not all. So we'll cover that. And the third one is, I don't know if you've ever noticed that if you get off to a great start, it helps a lot. So we're going to focus on particularly great starts, but also great finishes, so that people that listen to you are more likely to take the action that you want at the end of a presentation or talk, whatever the topic is. No guarantee, but it will increase the chances. So those are our key areas. So the first area that we're going to get into is this whole business about your personal impact. And that is, how you're coming across. And really, in order to look at this, and some people have mentioned body language, some have mentioned nerves already. And the key thing is to understand the basics behind it. And then we'll look at what I'm calling the physical skills of how we move, how we speak, where we look, all those things that are going to make the biggest difference to influencing your audience, whether it's online or not. So here we go. So the first thing I'd like you to look at is this. Okay, so we can see this flip chart. So whenever you're communicating, or we're communicating, we're always communicating message. And that message has three component parts. And the first component part is the words, obviously. By the words, I'm actually talking about the actual words that you say. I'm not talking about the way that you say them. You can see I'm drawing a little arm here. Here we are. A little hand holding the words. So I'm not talking about the way that you say the words. I'm only talking about the words themselves. So the script, if you like. The second thing is the voice. And this is what sometimes people call the music in the voice. You hear voices go up and down. They've, like an instrument. And so I'm talking here about not the words themselves, but I'm talking about the way the words sound, or the music in the voice. And you might be able to guess the sorts of things that we need to be interested in when we're talking about the way the voice sounds. So we might talk about tone. You can have a guess in your own mind what I'm going to write. Pitch. We might talk about speed. We could talk about emphasis. We might talk about the notation of the voice, which you might be wondering what that is. And when we look at breathing, we'll look at how sometimes the voice sounds like it's coming from up in my head. And some people are talking even a bit nasal sometimes. Or if I take a deep breath, diaphragm breathing, how now the voice has a lot more resonance. So where is the voice located? We'll talk about that. We might talk about pronunciation. All kinds of things we might want to be interested in. And then thirdly, the body language. What we're talking about here, give you a little guess. I can draw on here. I'll get a pen that's got a little bit more ink in it. Here we are. Let's draw an arm out here. There we are. So we're talking about things like, we'll be talking about obviously gestures. We might be talking about expressions, so facial expressions. There's one. Here's another. Okay, here's a third one. There we are. Doesn't look so happy, that one. So facial expressions, we might also be talking about posture, how we stand, how we move. There are all kinds of things that we could be talking about in body language. Now, why am I talking about these three aspects? Well, what's really important is that when we want to get the whole of our message across with impact, it's really important that you probably guess what these three things need to be doing to get the full message across. That's right. They need to be saying the same thing. They need to be aligned, because otherwise, if they're mixed, if the words and the voice and the body language aren't matching, then the audience either get a different message or they get a diluted message. You've probably been in presentations where a presenter had really good content, but it didn't actually come across that well. You could give the same content to a different speaker and the audience would get the full message. There's been research around this, and I'm going to give you a bit of research here that, fun enough, I'll tell you why in a minute, that I think it's often misquoted. But some of you may be familiar with this if you studied communication skills. There is research by a gentleman called Albert Mehrabian many years ago, who initially studied facial features, and he looked at the relative impact of these three. So let's have a look. He was looking at the question, the important question of which do people believe first? In other words, if people are especially if people are a bit confused with what you mean, they're not quite sure, do you think they're more likely to believe the words, the voice, or the body language first? Remember, we're talking about these three areas. Let's just check again. Words, voice, or body language. You might want to put in the chat what you think they're going to believe first. Which do you think? In his research, he came up with a pie chart with 55%, 38, and 7%. Which do you think we're going to put in the biggest area? The words, voice, or the body language? Is anyone going to type anything in the chat?
So
have a little guess, or just have a guess in your own mind.
So there's a couple for body language,
Yeah.
one or two for voice. It's mainly body language and voice.
Mainly body language and voice.
The two top.
Well, you're perfectly right. Because the smallest area was the words, and then the next area was the voice, and finally the body language. Let's just get a good purple there. new one. There we are. Body language. Now, why I say this is often misquoted is obviously this might be more on a good day, less on a bad day. It's not going to be exactly these numbers all the time, is it? But you get the drift of it, get the point. And one of the reasons I think it's misquoted often is people say, well, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And it makes it look as though the words are less important. Because when I first saw this, I was baffled because I thought, where do I put most of my preparation? When I'm preparing for a presentation, I put most of my effort into planning the words. So where this can be misconstrued, and I want you to get the proper meaning, this doesn't mean that the words aren't important. I coach many people to do presentations, and we spend a lot of time on the words, especially if I was coaching speakers for something really important. We've got to get the words right. The point is that unless these are congruent or in alignment, the words voice or body language, the words can be misconstrued. I mean, for example, if I'd begun today, after Siddharth kindly introduced me by saying something like, oh, it's lovely to see you all today. I'm very excited about being with you. Although I've done this many times, it's always great to be with a new audience, and we're going to have a lovely time today, and I'm sure you'll take away lots of valuable things. What's the message that you're getting? You're probably thinking, well, he's done this so many times, he couldn't care less. We're just another group of people. You're getting a different message, even though the words weren't too bad. The words were okay. Similarly, you may have been in times when you couldn't even see the body language. What about when you've been on the telephone, on a call where you couldn't see the person? Then you've only got the voice. Even then, the words can be misconstrued depending on how people are saying it. Also, when you receive a message, of course, that's written, that can be misconstrued. Let's take a look at this. I'm going to ask for Siddharth's help here. Otherwise, I'll have to do it all myself. So I've written a sentence up on here, and I'm going to play a little game with Siddharth. And I'm going to ask Siddharth to say that sentence with the emphasis on one word much more than the others. Siddharth, off you go.
I never said he stole that money.
Okay, I'll say it now. I never said he stole that money.
I never said he stole that money.
Ah, what might that mean? He might have borrowed it, mightn't he? Let me do one. I never said he stole that money. Siddharth, off you go.
I never said he stole that money.
Ah, Siddharth might have implied it, but he didn't actually say it, right? Fair enough. Right. What about me? I never said he stole that money. Oh, perhaps some other money. Siddharth, you final one.
I never said he stole that money.
Oh, right. Crikey. I never said he stole that money. So what are we learning out of our little experiment here? We're learning, aren't we, that if we change the meaning, we've only got 7 words here. We've essentially got at least 7 different meanings with 7 different emphasis on the word. So really, the key thing here is to say things really exactly how we mean them with the appropriate body language. So next, what we're going to do is learn some top tips for doing that. And we're going to start off with a little bit about the eyes, and then we're going to go with a little bit about stance and gestures and voice. So let me just put this around here for the moment. So we've got a bit of clear sheet at the back there. So let's start with the eyes. I don't know why you think eyes might be important. You can get into a lot of trouble with eye contact if you look at the wrong person at the wrong time, can't you? But it is important, because if you've ever been speaking to someone and they glance, they're looking over your shoulder, you think they might not be listening to you. It's a great way of gaining rapport with people, is eye contact. And a lot of these skills, I'm going to talk about how you adapt them online. When we're in a room, one of the things we don't want to be doing, looking at people, is flitting about like this. If we're doing a lot of flitting about, our eyes are flitting about or looking down, looking up, people get a bit irritated by that. What's much better is if we look at one person briefly, look at another briefly, another one at the back, it's one down the front. making eye contact with everyone in a room is really important. And don't miss out the people on the edges, because if people are missed out, it's easy to miss out people in your peripheral vision. People at the side, they can feel a bit left out. If you've got big audiences and you can't look at everybody individually, then you can look at groups. You often have people on tables. You can look at the table at the back, the table down here. People near you, you've often got to look at individually if they're right up the front. So eye contact is key, and you'll be surprised the amount of rapport you can get. If you're saying something sensible, you get a little nod from people when you make good eye contact with them. When you're online, make sure you've got the camera set up so it's roughly at eye level and you can look directly into the camera so people know that you're looking through them. And if you're going to look away, tell them you might be looking away. If you say, you're going to be taking notes, that's perfectly all right. But make sure you're looking at them, then they know also when they're speaking that you're listening. Second thing, we're going to look at stance. And this is how, where I'd like you to join in if you're up for, if you're able and up for it. You can do all of these things sitting down as well. But if you're able to stand and you'd like to join in, nobody can see you, and you'll learn the feel of this, which is important. So everybody standing if you can, or if not, seated. And we're going to look at some different ways to sit and stand. So first of all, if you're standing, I'd like you to stand with your weight over on one side. So you're leaning a bit like this. So I've got my weight on one foot here. This is a sort of casual stance, a little bit of a lean like this. And you might think, when is this appropriate in a presentation? Well, often people say, and quite correctly, be when you're chatting to people just before you start. Or if you're talking about something very informally, that would be good. But in the main, or answering questions, you might have been standing up straight. Somebody asks you a question. Oh, lady over here, and you might lean to look and listen to them. Often when we're leaning, it's a very approachable body language. It means we're listening, we're tilting the ear toward the person. That comes from evolution. So leaning one way or the other is okay to be in a casual stance some of the time, but it's not what I'm recommending most of the time. Most of the time, what's going to give you the most authority and the most impact is when you're upright, whether seated or standing. So those of you who are upright now, what I'd like you to do, I'm just looking at my feet here. See if you can have your feet roughly about hip width apart, roughly hip width apart. And balance evenly. So you're nice and straight. Most people, when I ask them to do this, if you pretend you've got a little thread on the top of your head, most people can get a little bit taller just by a few millimeters. Because most of us are slouching a little bit some of the time. So a little bit taller. Also, what that will do, if you've got your feet even there, you'll have a nice, confident stance. It will come across as the most believable, most assertive, most confident stance. And it's a great one to be in the majority of the time, especially if you're talking about something serious, but generally it's a good position to be in. It doesn't mean you can never move, but I would say move with a purpose. So if, for example, I move for no particular reason, so I'll just move a little bit now as I'm talking to you. Just notice what effect this has as I'm moving from side to side. You probably feel like you're on a boat or something. It's not as easy to listen to me. And certainly if I'm moving around a lot, it can get irritating. So if you move, move with a purpose, but then stay still. You might move to show some slides, but then stay still. Move to speak to the flip chart, but then stay still. The other thing is, those of you who are concerned with nerves, breathing is so important. And when you stand up straight, those of you who might want to try this, you might try standing up straight, or if not, sitting up straight. If you're sitting down, just sit up straight on the edge of your chair. And if we take, rather than when we're nervous, we're often breathing shallow and quick like this. Okay? If we take a nice deep breath, those of you who do yoga will know all about this. 3 or 4 of those begins to calm us down. And the best way to understand it, those of you who do singing, it's diaphragm breathing. I'll stand sideways. When I take this breath, instead of my tummy going in, watch, when I'm nervous, I'm going to breathe slowly and watch my hand and tummy coming out. So if you try 3 or 4 breaths that are very deep, then what you'll find is the body will automatically start calm you down. That breathing begins to calm you down. The chemical cortisol, which you get a lot more of when you're stressed, when we're stressed, will begin to diminish as you do even 3 or 4 deep breaths. The other thing I would say, because a number of people have asked about anxiety and nerves, is when we're speaking, typically, you probably understand we don't want to be completely relaxed. That might be a surprise to you, but have you ever noticed in any endeavor that matters, whether it's playing a musical instrument, playing a sport, whatever you're doing, if you're too relaxed and too sort of overconfident, actually your performance can get worse. This happens when, in tennis, say, a great player is expected to beat a lesser player and doesn't take the match seriously enough. A football team from a low league is playing in the cup against a big team. And the big team decides they're going to win this, and after 2 minutes, they're a goal down, and then they pull themselves together because they're too complacent. When we're speaking or presenting, in my experience, we need not to be completely nervous, but we need a little bit of adrenaline, a little bit on edge, but it's controlled. It's more of a relaxed alertness. And this deep breathing will help you so much with that. So that's a little bit about stance. The same happens when you're seated. Those of you who are seated now, or if you're not seated, have a seat. I'm standing up at the moment, so I'm not going to go and sit on the chair out of the way. You won't see me. But have a seat and feel the difference between sitting back. Now just slouch back in your chair for a bit, which is nice and comfy. That's it. Now just sit up on the edge of your seat with your back up straight. And I'd like you to stay like that for the entire rest of this webinar. No, you don't have to. But actually, can you feel the difference if you sit up on the edge of your seat? Yeah? I learned this once from a radio presenter who said to me, when we were taught to sit up on the edge of our seat up to the microphone. And the listeners would feel as though we're really talking to them, and we'd have much more impact. And also, it'll have you much more confidence. So when you're on Zoom or online, on Teams, something like that, the way you sit, it's okay sitting back a bit like this if you're listening. That's good. When it's your turn to speak, or if you're doing an entire presentation, then make sure that you're sitting up like that, and you'll feel better and you'll deliver your talk much better. And as an aside, if you do have a presentation to do, you might even consider, if it's important, to actually stand up, the laptop or your camera up high, and stand up and present online. That is a good thing to do because you feel different when you're standing up. That's not always possible or practical. So if you're sitting down, make sure you're nice and upright. So those are some tips on posture. Other things that are important, of course, are gestures. So you can have a go at these with me, even if you're seated there, or you can stand up if you fancy it. Let's look at gestures. I'm going to do some fiddly gestures here. And you might want to join in with me. Just have a go at what's it like if you put your arms together and gesture a bit like this. Just have a go at what that feels like. And if I were to describe things like that with these little gestures, like describe my house, here it is, look, there's my house. You go in the front door and here's the kitchen, and then there's the utility room, and then there's the garden. Seems like a doll's house, doesn't it? So we need to open up our gestures. Gestures are a good thing. And the reason is when we use gestures, we paint pictures of what we're talking about. And also, there's scientific evidence to demonstrate that when people were asked to keep their arms by their sides and try and explain something, they could do it. They could, but it was a lot more difficult. What was found was when they were allowed to move their hands, they marshaled their thoughts a lot better. They just found it easier to speak. And also, the people who were listening, when the hands were used to describe things, people found that so much easier to follow. So we don't want the fiddly gestures like this. We don't also want these. Just put your arms by your side for a moment and try. I'll move this flip chart for a minute and give a bit of room and try and, there we are. You can see all my arms now. So have a go at doing this. This looks a bit odd, doesn't it? So I'm gesturing like this. Looks like my arms are velcroed to the side, doesn't it? If I do that. Looks like there used to be a game on television on Whose Line Is It Anyway, where they played a game where someone stood behind and put their hands through the other person and did this. Do you remember that? It's on Dave Channel now, I think. Anyway, so what do we need to do? We actually need to have some daylight between our arms. So even if we're not in a massive room, you can open your arms right out. If I'm gesturing towards this flip chart here and I'm in a room, it looks perfectly all right, doesn't it? And yet, if you were to put your arm out now, if you could just put your arm out, that's it. It feels and looks like a big gesture, but actually, for the audience, it won't look too big. So gesturing like that is very helpful. So first thing, generally stay still. Okay? Don't wander about, but then get all the energy coming up into your hands. That's where the movement is. So keep your body you stand still, and then use your hands and gestures to create gestures to explain what you're talking about. Okay. With voice, some tips on voice. Okay. One of the biggest tips I can give you when people are speaking generally is, have a guess. Do I have to tell most people to speed up or slow down? You're probably right. Slow down. Generally, you can afford, when speaking to an audience, to speak a bit slower than you might think. And when you're online, your impact is diminished, really, when you're in a little box. So you need to up your energy, speak very clearly. And you can even slow down a bit. Make sure you really emphasize all of the words, carefully pronounce the beginnings and the endings of words. Periodically check that people are understanding you, and that will help you a lot. So slow down. But then, of course, when you've got a bit of excitement, you want to speed up a little bit. And to land a key point, slow down. You can even use your hands like this when something's really serious. I'm telling you this is important. And drop your voice. So our voice is nicely modulated when we are being more approachable and chatty and friendly. When we get serious, drop the voice. And certainly when you want to land key points, drop your voice. And a big tip I'd give you about presenting online is, if you've got, say, 12 or 15 slides to present, instead of just putting all the slides up to start with, do the intro with you in the frame and have yourself framed like this. So even when you're small at the side, you can see your arms, because that'll give more impact. The physical skills we talked about earlier will have a lot more impact when people can see your hands as well. It might not matter if you've got the odd thing to say, but if you're the main presenter, start with just you in the frame talking. And then show some slides. You'll be down here. Periodically, after a few slides, come back into the main picture to land a key point and connect with the audience. So you intersperse the talk with you full face on the screen. And certainly at the end, if you finished your slides and you want the call to action and summarize the key points, get yourself back on the screen then in full screen, and that will have much more impact. Okay, so there's some tips for online as well as in person. So those are all tips on the physical skills of presenting. So we're now going to move on to that second part, which is all about the magic structure, how we structure our talks and presentations. If you've got any questions about those physical skills, you pop those in the chat. I'll pick those up at the end. So if you remember our program that we're working through here, okay, so your personal impact. So we're standing up straight, we're using gestures, or we're sitting up straight, we're making eye contact. Those are the key points from here. And now we're going to look at what I'm calling the magic structure. Why do I call it a magic structure? Well, I don't know whether you've ever learned something that you wish you'd known before. Have you had that? Yeah, I know. Well, what I'm going to explain here, I learned this in Pennsylvania in 1999, and I thought, why didn't I learn this earlier? Because it was so helpful. And then when I went to do a couple of TEDx talks, I discovered in the advice I was sent that it matched almost this structure that I'm going to teach you, the advice I was giving about doing those talks. So here we go. Let's have a little look. So it might be that when if any of you have had to prepare a presentation, it's not always easy to know where to start, is it? Certainly for me, you've got your topic. I mean, that you wrote a topic down earlier, hopefully, or if you didn't, get a topic in mind now. And if you think, I want to give a talk on that, where do I start? How do I fit it all in? I've only got 15 minutes. I've only got 20 minutes. So many different people there, all interested in different things. How can you possibly structure it to suit everyone? Well, there is a way of doing it that will suit most people most of the time. And I'd like to explain it with a cartoon drawing. I didn't make this up. This is based on something called the four-MAT system, number four, MAT system, developed by Bernice McCarthy in America many years ago for teaching. It's fantastic for creating and crafting speeches as well. But I came up with a few cartoons to try and teach it to you. So here we go. So I'm just going to get this back in the picture again and make sure you can see the flip chart okay. So whenever we are listening to a talk, or if you're ever giving a talk, you'll often see different reactions from people in the audience. So here's one. This chap's looking a little bit puzzled. There he is. He's looking a bit puzzled. Most people have got one burning question on their minds. In fact, sometimes more than one, but he's certainly got one. And the question he's got on his mind is this question. Oh, wrong question. Wrong. How did I do that? Wrong question. Blimey, I've only done this umpteen times, and I've the wrong question at the top. Let's start that again. I've got to draw him again now, haven't I? Here he goes. Getting ahead of myself. There he is. Okay, he's got a burning question on his mind, and you might guess what it is. His question is this one. Why? He's thinking, why do I have to listen to all of this? I'm only here because Siddharth couldn't make this talk. So here we go. And what he's most interested in having is reasons to listen. And if he doesn't get reasons to listen very early, then he gets a bit fed up, really. So he needs to have reasons early. Other people are a little bit different. Hopefully you can see down here what I'm attempting to draw. There we are. Academic gown. I'm generalizing a little bit here, but some people, when you're speaking to them, they like to have a lot of information. You might have found people like this who love to have a lot of information. And if they like concepts, theories, models, so someone a bit academic would be typical, but not necessarily the only people. And if they've got a question, if they ask you a question, it usually starts with what? See if I can get a better red pen there. Usually starts with what? Because the what question is all about the main body of information, the main idea. Other people are not so much interested in why and what. I wonder if you can guess, by the way I draw this person down here, what they're most interested in. I'm generalizing a bit. So this young lady here, I'm going to give her some overalls. Here we are. There she is. I'm going to give her a spanner. There it is. She might be testing a circuit or something like that. She could be an engineer. That's right. So the question that she's most interested in is how. We've got what, why. Let's make that a bit bigger. What, why, and how. Okay. So she's not so bothered about the theory of everything. She just wants to have a go. So she's most interested in the practicalities. You think about, if you were teaching Monopoly to these two people, how would you teach this lady? Well, you'd probably give her the book, the instructions to read. How would you teach this lady? Well, you'd probably just start the game and she'd learn as you went along. So now, I don't know if you've found that even if you're very careful about planning a presentation, and you think you've thought of everything, you often get somebody who halfway through is going to ask you a question that begins with, what if? I had this. People say, excuse me a minute, what if, what if it's 3 o'clock in the morning and the lights go out? What are you going to do then? So, or they'll give you the counter example, the thing that you're thinking of, and you explain, they'll give you the opposite or show you why it won't work. And that's because you've got some people like this gentleman here, who's very good, or him pointing his finger. He's very good at thinking of things that you've missed. But actually, these aren't good or bad. They're all fine. Even he sometimes can seem irritating because he's asking what seem like awkward questions. But this is the sort of person who's very good at listening to what you're saying and identifying where it won't work. Most people are thinking, as they're processing information from you, they're trying to figure out how it will work. Occasionally, you do get people who are very good at thinking, how won't that work? These sorts of people are very good at in health and safety, debugging computer programs, all that sort of thing. So now he's very good at thinking, what if it won't work? But there's another side to the what if question, isn't there? That's right. Not what if it won't work? What if it does work? Okay. So here we go. So some people are really good at listening to you, like this young lady here. There we are. She's very good at listening to you. While she's listening to you, she's imagining the future. So she's thinking of the future and particularly the benefits of what you're saying. So she's thinking of the future benefits and where she can apply everything that you're talking about. So what would be useful now is if you just make a little note about which are you more like, just jot it down. Are you more of a why or a what or a how? Which are you more like? You can always pop it in the chat if you like. We could see where we've got the majority, but people are generally quite spread out. So are you more of a why or a what or a how? Or does it depend on the topic? And might it be that you're more than one? You depending what the topic is, you're interested in more the why and the how or the what if, and it just depends. But what's interesting to know then is what's the upshot of this? And the upshot of it is, and you could probably guess, that that really, if we want to reach most people most of the time, what do we have to do? That's right, we have to cover a bit of each of these. And when I'm coaching people, you might want to have a guess. If I haven't given anybody any instruction or any teaching, when they're preparing a presentation, which of these two bits do they generally miss out, would you say? Or no, put it the other way around. So they bring a presentation to me and they've been planning it. Which two areas here have they generally got more information about, more content on? What would you say? Have a little think. I can tell you, it tends to be the what and the how. These two bits tend to be the bit that people haven't thought about so much. They tend to thought more about the what and the how. So let's have a little. Let's have a look. Before we go on to the next step, which is I'm going to talk in a moment about why we need to cover all four. That's what's going to be coming up in a moment, why we need to cover all four of these and what we're going to put in each of these. And I'll give you more detail in a moment. Let's have a look. So in the why section, well, in fact, a great tip to start off is to start off any talk with what we call a short what. Short what. That's just the title. Tell people in one sentence what you're talking about. Today, I'm going to talk about the new health and safety policy and how it applies to you. Straight off the bat. Or you might have that on a slide, but it's good to say it. First thing to do is to get people curious, give them some reasons to listen. And I'll give you more tips on that coming up shortly, but get people curious, get people motivated and interested to listen. Biggest mistake people often make is diving straight into the what. Give you some more tips on that in a minute. When we get into the what section, one of the things that we want to do is introduce our big idea. What is the key message? What is the key message? Or what is your big idea? Or the main thing you're talking about, and to split it into sections. So A, B, C. 3 is often good. If you're talking about well-being or something, you might say, well, I'm going to talk about diet, exercise, and mental well-being. So split it into, say, 3 sections. In the how section, okay, this is where we want to be giving examples. Give practical examples in that section. Give evidence in this section. Okay, so practical examples, evidence, a demonstration of whatever you're talking about is good in this section. And in the what if section, what we need in the what if section are two separate things. There's 2 sorts of what ifs. A, there's this sort of what if, which is going back to our diagram in the last picture. Here we are. First of all, we need some what ifs for this person, the person who interested in the risks. So we want to talk in this section about the problems and how to resolve. If you're trying to sell an idea, you don't want to overemphasize the problems, but sure enough, if you don't mention any potential glitches, someone will come up with them. So problems and how to resolve, what are any issues? That's in A. And in B, we need to do 3 things in the second part of the what if. And this is then appealing to everybody, but particularly people in this future benefits section. Okay. So there are 3 things I would suggest you do. One, you can probably guess, which is a summarize the points. What do you want people to take away? And the second one will be to give a call to action. And then the third one will be describe the difference, the action will make. Describe not just the call to action. So it might be, I'd like you to share these notes with your team on Monday. And if you do that, these new safety notes, what that'll mean is by next Monday, instead of 10 people knowing it, 100 people will know it. And if they implement this, the place will be much safer and we'll get no more accidents like the one we had last week. The idea. So it's taking them out to the future to show the impact of that action. So now we're going to have a poll here. So we've got a question, which is, having learned a bit about, and you may have known it before, a bit about the format system, these areas, which of these 4 areas will you now, and especially thinking about the topic that you wrote down, which of these 4 areas will you now focus on more? Pick one. And Siddharth, have you got the poll ready?
Yeah, so I've just launched the poll.
Yep.
So yeah, we'll give you guys a couple seconds if you'd like to just answer it, and then I can read out a couple of what the split's like. So we've got about 10 people answered so far at the moment. What if is at 32%? How 12%? 19%? It's flying up and down. I'll just give everyone a couple seconds before
that's fine.
I read them out, I guess. But
okay.
Yeah, just give another 15 seconds if anyone else would like to answer.
So it tends to be every single time I do this, it always ends up with why and what if. Okay. Being the ones that people need to do more of. And what I would say is that, right. Thank you, Siddharth. That's fantastic. Yes, we've got really about 65% in the and there's no right answer, of course, but it just is. Okay. So one of the things is Okay, how's that? We done with the poll there, Siddharth? Is that
Yes, we are.
we
So,
still got it? I'll
so I'll just
whip
read
that
those
off the
out for you.
screen, yeah.
So what is 20%?
Yeah.
Why 34%? How 14%? And what if 31%? So, like you said, why and what if are the two
Yeah.
forerunners.
Great. Okay, thank you. All right. So top tip, really. We got that still on people's screens now. We
It should be gone.
oh, it should be gone.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Right. Great. So tip there really is make sure that we do something at the start to hook people in. And that's what we're going to move into next. So if you remember, show you where we are in our program. We've got about 5 minutes or so, 5-10 minutes now to look at great starts and finishes. So what we're doing now is we're going to look particularly, well, we've already pretty much covered the finish, which is this section here, but I'm going to give you some more on doing a great start. Okay. So you might already have ideas for a great start. People, you can put things in the chat if you like. I mean, people normally put things in like tell a story, tell a joke, which could be dangerous, but be careful with that. Give a quote, startling statistics, startling facts. I'm going to focus on three things that are very helpful for getting off to a great start. I'm going to talk about what I call the big E first, the big one, that what I would always recommend. And this is called, well, one of the biggest mistakes people can make, I think, is to not do any why and dive straight into the what, because you haven't got people motivated to listen. Okay. So people will often say, hi, my name's Graham, and today I'm going to talk to you about the new computer system. Right, first, let me tell you about the system. Some people are thinking, well, why do I need to know this? What's this got to do with me? I'm only, I'm not a computer analyst, whatever. So we need something to get people on your side. One quote, which I wish I'd come up with, I put it in my book, came from a gentleman called Ken Hamer, who worked for AT&T. And he talked about designing presentations. And he talked about really having the audience in mind first when you start and not being too enthusiastic about what you're about to say, but keep them in mind and what they might be thinking. And his quote was, he said, to design a presentation without the audience in mind was like trying to write a love letter that begins for whom it may concern. Okay, you could write one, okay, but we could write one, but it wouldn't be a very good one, would it? If we hadn't got the person in mind. Okay, so when we're planning a presentation, it's better if we can put ourselves in the shoes of the audience. And the tip I can give you is don't always be so enthusiastic about your topic, because sometimes you start and say, I'm here today to tell you about fantastic new way that we're going to run the accounting system. And people are thinking, well, I'm quite happy with the old system. Why is he telling us this in February? When it's March, we're going to be doing all the work on this, and it's a new system and we won't understand it. So don't start like that. Start from where people are. Start from where people are. Put yourself in their shoes and say some things that the reaction would be in their minds. We're going to talk about something you may have heard of called yes sets. I just spent a couple of minutes on that to round off. So yes sets. So the first thing that you say, you really want it to be something that the entire audience, they might go whoopee, might not go whoopee, but they're going to think, yes, that makes sense. Okay, it's got to make sense. And the second thing you say, and the third thing you say, make sure that they all make sense and they connect with the entire audience. Because think about it. If by chance, this is why a joke can be risky, if by chance the first thing you say doesn't make complete sense to the audience, you might get away with that. People are thinking, I don't know about that. If the second thing you say doesn't completely hang together, then now, what are they now thinking about the third thing that you haven't said yet, but you might say? People are very quick to form an impression. They're already thinking that this might not be for them or might not be making sense. So make sure by doing what we call a yes set, by saying some things that would encompass the entire audience. Now, you can't just say anything. You can't say, this is a flip chart. We all know that. We must say something that is helpful to the group and connects with them. So phrases that are useful, and there are loads of these in the book, are phrases like, as you may be aware. So take that health and safety example I gave you earlier. You're speaking to a group of people about a new health and safety policy. You might say something like, as you may be aware, we've had a number of incidents to do with safety in the last 3 months. Now, the word here may is important because people may be aware, they may not. If you're sure they're aware, you can say, as you are aware. As you may be aware, well, yes, that's a yes, we're aware of that. And perhaps you've noticed some new posters around the building and also some building work going on at the bottom of where the car park is down there. You might have seen that. Perhaps they have, perhaps they haven't. Okay. And you may be wondering, that's a good one, because people, they usually are wondering something. So that's usually a good one. You may be wondering why I've asked you all here today. So those are just three things that you might say, to which the answer is always yes. It's not, doesn't give you a total wow start, but it ensures that people are on the same page as you. And in communication skills, we would call this pacing. So this is just bringing the group along with you, like a runner who's pacing people along on a running track, bringing them along. Then we move from pacing into leading. So we might say something like, so, therefore today, I'm going to talk to you about X, Y, and Z. So this is leading. So we go from pacing to leading. So once we've said, as you may be aware of this, you might have noticed that. You've seen we've had some incidents. This is really important. This is why I've brought you here today. And therefore, I'm going to talk to you about three things. And off you go. So that's when you go from this yes sets would occur in the Y section. And that's when then you move into your key message after that. And if you're online, this is a nice little intro that you can do just to the camera without having any slides and just move into the what section. So yes sets is one top tip. I'm going to give you two more top tips because we've got a couple of minutes to round off. Second top tip is, and there are lots more in the book, you might want to think for your topic next time you're doing it to write some yes sets. Think of the audience and write some yes sets and just get a couple down. Two or three lines is in, 3 or 4 lines is enough. But also startling facts. Anybody here who wants to put a startling fact in the chat, Siddharth might pick it up, a startling fact about your own presentation. I'll give you an example. Again, this is one that I found that I thought was great, so I put it in my book. In his TED Talk, David Epstein was talking about athletic performance and the improvement in performance. And he said, in the 2012 Olympic marathon, the winner ran a time of 2 hours and 8 minutes. Had he been racing against the winner of the 1904 Berlin Marathon, he would have won by almost an hour and a half. So, I mean, that's sort of got you off the edge of your seat, hasn't it? When you hear something like that. So again, for your own topic, if you might want to start, you can still do yes sets. I would always do yes sets, but you could start straight off the bat with a line like that. So what is it that you're talking about that you could come up with something that people would go, wow, I never realized that. Now I'll sit and listen. Okay. So startling facts is a good one. Another one that you can use, the final one before we wrap up talk here, is, you might have come across this, is rhetorical questions. So these are questions, obviously, that you come up with. You don't want people to shout out the answer in the audience, but you might want them to just kind of think, oh yeah. Right. There's an example. In fact, I've got it written on the wall here. I was going to grab the book there, but actually I put it in the book, but it's from Simon Sinek. You might have seen one of his TED Talks. And he started a talk which went like this. I'm reading it off the wall here. How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy expectations? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Okay, so that was the start of his TED Talk. So he's just giving you some rhetorical questions that start to get people curious. So all of these things, yes sets, starting facts, all of those sorts of things can be put in this beginning to get you off to a great start. What you'll notice is you get people kind of nodding and they're with you, or you see their eyes lighting up. So this system, the format system, is fantastic for that. It's even really good if you have to speak off the cuff. If you're in a project meeting and someone says, can you update us on this project or topic? You could be in a seminar and you think, where do I start? Just ask yourself the 4 questions. What's the title of the project? Why are we doing this project? What is the big idea of the project? Let me give you some examples of how the project is currently working. Let me tell you about some things that have been going wrong and how we're trying to fix them. And now let me tell you where the project is going over the next 3 or 4 months and over the next year. All in your head, you're hanging all the information on those 4 questions, and people think you sound very smart and intelligent, and of course you are. As long as you know the content, you can hang it all in there. You can even use it. I'll do a final, just to round off, final little demonstration with Siddharth here. I did warn him about doing a demonstration of this. I've asked him to come up with a topic, but we haven't practiced it, have we, Siddharth?
No, we haven't. So
We haven't.
it's fun.
Right. So he's a little bit on the spot. You'll be thankful now. Everybody else is thinking, I'm glad it's him and not me. Right. But I'm going to give them a job to do as well. What I'm going to ask is the audience that are watching, everyone that's watching, what you can be doing is as I'm going through with Siddharth, you can think, are we in the why, what, how, or what if? Okay. So this is where we go back to the are we in the how, why, what, how, or what if? So this is where, let's say Siddharth's got a presentation of 20 minutes. You can do is you can do at the top here a little bit of why, a little bit of what, a little bit of how, and a little bit of what if before you get into the big why and what and all the rest of it. Okay, so you can do just a little taster bit at the start. So let's see how this will go. How we're going to do this is we're going to improvise it. We've just got a minute left, so it wouldn't take longer than that. So I'm going to feed Siddharth some lines, okay, and he's going to say the end of the line. So I'm going to go through the structure, and you watch where is he in the why, what, how, or what if. Right. What's your topic, Siddharth?
I'm going to be talking about the recent explosion of MMA and how it's become a very mainstream sport recently.
Of what? What was that?
MMA, so mixed martial arts. So the
Oh,
UFC and all of that recently, yeah.
Mixed martial arts, right. And who would your audience be? Can it just be the audience we've got now, yeah?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Just
fine.
the general audience.
Okay, are you ready, Siddharth?
Okay.
Right. Right, so you follow, we're going to do a little whiz around the format system. So easy in the why, what, how, what if. Right, ready. So, hello everyone. My name is
Siddharth.
Siddharth, and today I'm going to be talking to you about
The recent explosion of mixed martial arts into mainstream media.
Right, okay. So now, as you may be aware,
MMA has become quite a popular sport worldwide over the last year or two.
yeah, and you might have noticed
that it's coming and showing up on your main sports screens, and you may not be able to get away from it, even if you're not particularly interested.
Yeah, and some of you may even have
heard of some of the big names such as Conor McGregor or John Jones, and recently the UK champion Tom Aspinall.
Yeah. So therefore, what I'm going to do today is talk about 3 things. Firstly,
I'm going to be talking about what may have caused this massive explosion onto mainstream.
Yep. Secondly,
I'm going to be talking about how it happened, some of the factors that may have caused it to become such a massive deal.
Yep. And most importantly, thirdly, I'm going to talk about
where it's going to be going, what we might see happen in the next few years, and yeah, what you can expect from the world of mixed martial arts.
Right. And how this session will work, it'll last about
20 minutes or so.
20 minutes. And obviously everybody's needs are different. So there'll be an opportunity for you to
ask questions and yeah, poke some holes into what's going on.
Yeah. And by the end of the session, what you will have is
an idea of where we're going, why it's such an important thing to keep an eye on, and how you might be able to benefit from it.
Uh, if everyone was online, they'd be giving you a big round of applause, Siddharth. And they'd be thinking, I'm glad it's him and not me doing that.
Thank you so
Okay.
much. It was
All
very
right.
easy.
Yeah. But it shows how you can, off the cuff, just do a little mini intro before you get into the big topic, just to get everyone on board. So there we are. So a little summary of what we've done. We've looked at your personal impact, talked about physique, standing straight, using your hands, making great eye contact, whether online or in person. Talked about the magic structure, Bernice McCarthy's format system, why, what, how, what if planning your presentation. Great starts and finishes. So always get people on board at the beginning, create some curiosity, and always end with, if you've got a call to action, end with a call to action and describe the difference it will make, take people out to the future. And in terms of those overcoming nerves, remember the breathing and the posture will help you with that too. There we go. Thank you very much, Siddharth.
Great. No, thank you
And
very much.
good luck everyone with your speaking and presenting at university, college, or wherever you happen to be doing it.
Well, I'm sure with all the tips that you presented today, it's going to become a lot easier. I wish I was still at uni because I would have been, furiously using every one of these tips. So first of all, thank you so much, Graham. And in case you haven't seen everyone, I have put a link in the chat, and I'll put it in again where you can get Graham's book. So first of all, thank you very much. But what we're going to do now is just open up the floor for any questions from our attendees, and we do have a couple pre-submitted questions as well. So ask a few questions. So again, this is the time for you guys to be able to put some questions in and pose them to Graham.
And can I thank? There are lots of thank you messages coming in, so some people might be going. But can I say also, for those even who have to go now, thank you so much for your attention. And there's been a lot of content in there, so hopefully it wasn't too much for you. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And in case anyone missed it, we will be sending out an email with the link to the video as well as some
That's
of
fine.
these slides and all that too.
And the flip charts here. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
I'll photograph the flip charts for them.
brilliant, brilliant. Oh, perfect. So yeah, just please keep an eye out on your emails. So what I'm going to do now is we have a question in the Q&A, and we have a couple pre-submitted questions. So I'm just going to pose a couple of those to you. And in the meantime, if any of you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat, and we'll try and get through them. So this is actually quite an interesting one, Graham. So this question was, if there are a lot of presentations happening on one day, how can you ensure that yours stands out and is remembered?
That's a great one, isn't it? That's a fantastic question. There's not, I can only speak from my experience. There's not necessarily one way of doing that, but if I give you some general tips on what makes things stand out, there's people tend to remember what's first and what's last. Okay, so if you're the first speaker or the last speaker, generally speaking, you've got a bit of an advantage because people tend to. So if you've got any choice about where you get yourself placed, it's often quite good to be the first or the last, but you often don't have choice about that. But if you think of that principle of first and last, people remember what's first and what's last, but they also remember what's different. And there is an effect called the von Restorff effect, which there was a lady called Hedwig von Restorff, and she did experiments where she discovered what people remembered over time from years ago. And people could remember might have two Fs on. And she found that there was, and it might be that people listening now, there are events in your life that you can remember so vividly from years ago because they stood out so much. So you knew exactly where you were at a certain time, that sort of thing. So anything that you can do to make things memorable is going to be fantastic. So it's something different. Perhaps you have a prop. Perhaps you bring something in. Perhaps you have a really fantastic picture. So it might be a big picture of a shark or something that people, oh wow, remember that picture of a shark. So pictures are great. That's the other thing. Rather than words, people will remember pictures. So rather than have 5 or 6 lines, you could show picture. One of the authors that's really good at this is a chap called trying to remember his name now. It'll come back to me in a minute. Who's written a book called Presentation Zen? Gar Reynolds, Garr, Gar Reynolds, and he's got a book called Presentation Zen. He actually shows this slide. I'm going to show you a slideshow view from current slide. He was trying to explain to people what blogs are like, and he used this slide. It's on his website, I think it was, where I got it. And he used this slide. This is the person's first attempt at a slide, okay? Blogs are like sharks. All the information about why they like sharks. Here's the second attempt, this person's attempt to create a slide to say the same thing.
Graham, your screen doesn't seem to be sharing.
Ah, right, okay.
Not too sure.
And show. Right, okay. Share. Send. Okay. Let's just come out of that. Sorry. Perhaps I didn't click share screen, did I? Is that right? Share screen. Here we go. Can you see it now?
Yeah, it's showing now. Yeah.
It's showing now.
Yeah.
So if I did current slide, okay, so here we go. So there's the first slide, yeah?
Yeah.
The first attempt at a slide. Typical of what might be slides. Here's the second attempt. What the difference? Okay. So to answer the question, there are so many ways to differentiate yourself. But one would be powerful pictures. There's so much evidence they stay in the memory. The other one is, put some really important at the beginning, spell out your message at the end. People remember it first or last. Use something different. Have a prop that people will remember. Is that helpful?
I'm sure it was, to be honest.
Hopefully.
A couple of the pre-submitted questions you actually answered during your presentation, so I'm not going to touch in on those because they were already answered. But there is an interesting one here, actually. Not too sure if you'll be able to answer this, but do you have any tips to overcome pronunciation issues, especially for someone who has dyslexia and can struggle pronouncing words, or sometimes under nervous situations may get the words mixed up?
I think, yes. I mean, I'm not an expert on that, on those issues such as dyslexia or anything like that at all. All I would say is that in terms of pronunciation, typically, if you practice, that's going to help. So if there are certain words that you feel you stumble on, that's going to help. What I would also say is sometimes you could record yourself with phones these days. You can record yourself and play it back and try that. The other thing I would say is a lot of it depends on your state. So what I know is people are more likely generally to falter if they're anxious. So all those things we talked about with your state, so sitting down or standing up beforehand, the deep breathing, that kind of thing, I believe would be helpful. And the other thing to remember, it's not a total disaster if you do slip over a word or make a mistake. Audiences are really forgiving. They really are. Yeah, typically slower is better. It's a bit like practicing anything. If it was drumming or guitar playing, you'd probably do it a bit slower. So do some slow practices. See if there are any words that you think you might struggle with and practice saying those. It's probably not the best answer, but there's a few tips in there.
No, I think that was brilliant. And so I think we've come to the end of our questions, unless there's anyone that has any last minute burning ones they'd like to throw into the chat. But if not, I'd like to just take this opportunity and thank you so much, Graham. It's been very, very informational, very, very helpful. And I think, as you can see from the chat, everyone seems to have found it very enjoyable and very helpful. So yeah, thank you so much for your time, for your effort. Again, if anyone would like any more of Graham's help or information, his website is www.grahamshaw.co.uk. And again, the link to Graham's book is in the chat, but I will be sending out an email later this week with a link to the video as well as a link to getting his book. So yeah, again, thank you so much, Graham, for everything. And I had a great session, and I think I'm speaking for everyone else when I say that it was very, very helpful and very enjoyable.
Thank you, Siddharth, for all the prep and helping me to get prepped for it and guiding everyone through this. And even though I can't see anyone, I really do thank you all for taking your valuable time, and do hope you've got something really useful from it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, take care, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon, and